Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. One of the most fundamental challenges of living in Nigeria today is having to make do with epileptic power supply. It is a problem that has defied the best efforts of successive administrations. Local and international alliances that at various times been entered into with a view to bridging the gap in power generation, transmission, and distribution. But the impact remains at best minimal. The cumulative effect of this, of course, is an increasingly fractious relationship between those whose duty it is to supply power to the general public. However, Nigeria's current Minister of Power, Bachelor, says the poor perception is all down to ignorance of the realities of the privatization of the power sector. Joining us now to speak on this and other issues is Chairman Ikeja Electric, Kola Adesina. Kola, good to see you.
Good to see
you.
Morning. Morning.
You're looking good.
Thank you very much. Internally, I'm suffering.
Well, it's not showing on your face.
Oh, thank God for his mercy.
Anyway, good to have you here.
Thank you.
You know, I was referring to the Minister of Power, Bachelor. Yeah. He gave a lecture recently in which he took up this issue of privatization and what he referred to as the realities of privatization. But first, you know, in that same lecture, he talked about the recent crisis we've had in terms of electricity supply. Yeah. And he was talking about gas issues, water management issues, you know, the problem with the national grid, and, you know, about 24 out of about 29 GENCOs having to shut down their plants, resulting in this epileptic power supply. Now, where really does the problem, where does it lie? Because GENCOs have problems. There's the transmission company also has problems. Owners of discos like yourself are also complaining. What can we do to find a solution to this problem?
First and foremost, thank you so much for the privilege of inviting me here. For me, it's really not rocket science. Our challenge is seemingly fundamental and foundational in nature. I think part of what I would always advocate, for a system to work efficiently and effectively, there is a need to properly understand the system requirement. Define the problem appropriately, then you're halfway in providing solutions to the problem. The problem with the sector, for me, goes thus. I love the fact that the Honorable Minister, in dimensioning the various issues in the sector, spoke to the fact that the assets we acquired in 2013 were aging far beyond what was even documented. Equally, the expectation of the consumers arising from privatization has not been properly situated in the light of the reality of the sector. And what are the realities of the sector? The first thing is, for a nation to develop any infrastructure, you need to have a full understanding of your population. What is the size of your customer number? How many people are you serving? Where are they? Who are they? What's their economic capacity? What's their power requirement? Now, when you do a scoping of this, you see the reality of what you require to make this available. When I hear that the Nigerian population has grown phenomenally to 201 million, and I place it side by side with the infrastructure available, there should be a major concern. Because if infrastructure is not moving ahead of the population, you will always have all these challenges. So part of what I will say from an electricity point of view is, yes, it's a value chain problem. Starting with gas. Nigeria is a gas-centric nation. We have gas everywhere. With so-called 187 trillion cubic feet of gas, and we just generate approximately about 5,000. That speaks volume to the fact that we're not utilizing the resource we have comparative advantage over. That's number one. Now, in that bucket as well, is the fact that you require infrastructure to take gas from where it is situated to where the power plants are. Part of the standard principle of location of industry, if some of us remember commerce and economics, would be that you cite your business, either proximate to the feedstock, the raw material you require, or to the consuming public, those who are going to buy your product. And in our own case, you want to look at dimensioning the transmission infrastructure that is required. Did we truly have plans, adequate plans around establishing this infrastructure? This conversation that most of us speak to today is that how the distribution companies, they're not doing what they should do and the rest of them. One of the things I've said is that there must be alignment between principle and policy for you to get the kind of result you desire. The value chain today is not properly aligned. And it's not properly aligned along several lines. One, the payment discipline. Now, people speak to the fact that, yes, we should first and foremost provide electricity and then charge the right price. Payment discipline is engendered and built upon payment principle. Payment principle is built upon a funding requirement to make the system work. Now, if you've done your dimensioning and you've realized that the amount required in order to give power in an uninterrupted, stable and reliable manner to the consuming public gives you a tariff of, say, 60 naira per kilowatt hour. And you now say to the distribution companies that you should charge 23 naira for that same commodity.
Anyway, we'll come to
there is a misalignment there.
We'll come to that issue of tariffs later.
No, I'm speaking to, what I'm saying is that the foundation,
yes,
and the foundation is what I'm laying, that the funding requirement, what do we need? What is the funding requirement for what we need? Who is going to pay for it? How much are they going to pay for it? Then on the basis of that, you now set, for me, performance targets. But if in doing all this, you did it on the basis of more of sentiments, without the backing of the rigorous analysis you've done and the outcome of that analysis being used as a basis of forming policies, plans, and programs, then you have a problem.
But let me take you back to this issue about privatization, with which we started. In that same presentation by the Minister of Power, he made it clear that, you know, there are concerns about how privatization was done, how PACM was unbundled, and that Section 73 and Section 74 of the Electricity Power Sector Reform Act empowers the regulator, the NERC, to review license, not to renew license. Now, given the, what I may use as the bad blood, you know, between the Ministry of Power and the GENCOs and DISCOs, do you see the possibility, do you have any fears that somewhere down the line, some of these licenses could be determined? Okay.
Pardon me for this slight digression.
Okay.
You made a first class. You were in Abeokuta Grammar School, and you did very well. You were brilliant. Tools were provided for you to achieve the success you recorded. There was a syllabus. You read on the basis of your syllabus. You went in, you had the right tools, the books were there for you. The classrooms were okay for you to listen to your lecturer. And eventually, you, Reuben Abati, you made first class. You go back to the foundation. You don't, the emotional viewpoint regarding license cancellation, review of licenses, they are all there in the regulation, undoubtedly. But remember, there are enablers that are equally there in that same law. Things that government must do. Have you done your own part before you start to interpret the law to use the stick of cancellation or review? You can't expect Usain Bolt to run sub 10 seconds and tie a stone around his legs.
But Usain Bolt understands the pitch which he's going to run before he decides to run.
Of course.
And so when it comes to privatization, I know the minister has also said in the past, you know, you didn't go into this business with your eyes closed.
Of course.
You understood the rudiments, you understood the challenges,
of course,
what it was, but you went into it anyways.
Yes.
And so you should own up to responsibilities and provide power.
Excellent. For those who may need to know this, at the point of privatization, the following actions took place. We were given the privilege of having to view a data room. We went to the data room, reviewed the asset base, and all that. For some, they had the privilege of real due diligence, but for many, the Nigerian Union of Electricity Employers and our trade made it almost impossible for that to happen. So again, there was this heavy reliance on the information provided by government. Okay, put that aside. For those of us who bidded, what did we do? We said, okay, for those who had a view of the asset, we dimensioned the risk. And what we said was that the requirement for success for those of us buying the assets are as follows. 1, cost-reflective tariff. Because everything fits into the price. When you see the price of a particular commodity, it's a function of you dimensioning the costs required to make that commodity available. And that was done. And part of what government said was that we will give you cost-reflective tariff all the way. Equally.
Under MITO, right?
Yes, under the multi-year tariff order.
Yes.
Equally, part of what was stated there was that if there is any movement along exchange rate, inflation rate, interest rate, those are the macroeconomic factors that determine pricing anywhere in the world, that such movement will be reflected in tariff reviews as we move by. As I sit here today, the sector, from a distribution perspective, is lagging behind its 6 reviews. We ordinarily ought to have had 6 reviews, but nothing has happened. Even the review we had before, part of the very critical information that needs to be put out there is this. You find in our system where the generation company raises its invoice and gets paid at the exchange rate of 3.05. Meanwhile, I, the distribution company, I'm charging you, the consumer, using an exchange rate today, 2019, of 1.99. So where would I be able to source the forex I require to procure the materials I need to give you electricity if the exchange rate has a misalignment issue?
Well, how do you encourage cost-reflective tariffs when the consumer is not treated as the king? I mean, let's talk about metering,
Yes.
which has been one of the biggest challenges.
Okay.
Nigerian consumers believe that, it's a deliberate effort by the discos not to meter them because they make stupendous gains from estimated billings.
Well, add to that the fact that, the regulator has introduced what it calls meter access providers, which will be third parties providing meters and to, address the mischief of estimated billing that she just referred to. How are you handling that as discos?
Okay. Like I said earlier, the cost structure of the sector is well spelled out. And amongst the many things from a distribution perspective would be for you to meter, for you to provide transformers and the rest of them. As an investor, private sector, it will make real nonsense of my business model if all I have to rely on is revenue that I cannot really calibrate. When I receive energy and I give energy to the consumer, I want to know who is consuming what and where. Because therein lies the basis for my investment plan. Therein lies the clarity regarding the people I should serve more that have capacity to pay. Transparency with regards to where the energy goes is going to help my business. Lack of clarity is not helping me, it's helping those benefiting from the corruption of the system. By the way, before I go further, metering is an ongoing exercise and is meant to be something any normal, intelligent organization should focus on as a distribution company. And everybody does that universally. But meanwhile, please note, the number of customers metered today and those bypassing the meter almost split in half. So you have a situation where there are meters, and 50% of the population of customers metered, they have bypassed the meter. So the meter becomes useless.
No, but
because
that cannot be an excuse for
no, it can't be an excuse.
higher billing, you know.
No, it can't be. However, please note, metering is a component of the cost structure. For me to meter, it means the tariff must be right. There must be resources for me to procure that meter. What I'm saying to you is that where the cost of my service is 16 naira, hypothetically, currently the tariff is 27 naira.
Well, but you must also realize that the regulator has a responsibility not to just leave everything to market forces. Because when you quote macroeconomic things like interest rate, like foreign exchange rate and all that, the job of the regulator is to make sure, is to modulate or moderate the greed of the capitalist investor.
Okay, interestingly, we run a value chain which is equally a greed. And the greed is greedy. Why? You find that the population is increasing, and the reviews that are meant to take care of the population with regards to electricity infrastructure is not there. So whilst you're having aspiration that you want to be metered, it's good. It's okay. It's a legitimate expectation. But equally, I, as an investor, the doctrine of legitimate expectation confers on you, the regulator, to equally give me the tariff that will make me provide the meter for you. If I don't have a tariff model, don't forget, I'm a private sector. I'm not public sector. So I'm here to ensure that the money I put into the business comes back, and I put more money, it comes back. The regulator's role is to ensure that I receive just and fair return on investment. That's the job of the regulator. However, because of the fact that in the triangle of responsibility for the power sector, you have government, you have the consumer, and then you have what? Myself. As a private sector individual, I'm not meant to take care of the social or emotional side of the business. I'm an economist. It's the economic side I must focus on. Where government says that...
You also have social responsibility.
Now, the social responsibility I have, and this is what I have, really, and I wear that hat every day in my business. If you are happy as my consumer, my business becomes better. If you are paying more as a consumer, my business grows. If I'm providing service for you and you are paying regularly, there is mutual happiness between both sides of the equation. But where the revenue and the costs are misaligned, we have a crisis on our hand. And that needs to be addressed as quickly as possible. I would want to intervene from the standpoint of consumers who are weak. Government has a social contract to protect those who are weak in the society. Now, as a responsible business organization, I equally need to align with government in protecting those who are weak. So therefore, government did something called cross-subsidy in sculpting the tariff. And what do I mean by this? It simply means those who have the capacity to pay, they pay more. Now, that decision has its own implication. Why? If Nigeria wants to industrialize, if Nigeria wants to become export-oriented, it invariably means that the cost of our goods and services must be competitive. So, again, government comes in. And this is where government needs to come in to say, okay, the people in Igodo, the people in Akute, and the rest of them, they need electricity. I, as a disco, I know they need electricity. It makes sense if they have electricity. It helps my business model if they have electricity. At what price? Can we sit down together and have a conversation, dimension what is required for those people to pay? Now, if government sets aside that fund, and I don't do my own part, then you can go into the license and trigger Section 73 of the EPSR. But you can't do so if you've not enabled me to do what I'm supposed to do. I'm in business not just to make money. I'm in business for the purpose of ensuring that the society becomes better.
But to make money first. Anyways, a lot of attention is paid on distribution end of this.
Yeah.
In fact, some have described it as the weakest link in the chain. But let's look at the transmission end of this chain.
Yeah.
What exactly is the problem with the transmission? Because more often than not, it is recording system collapse. Why does this recur?
Again, it's still back to the same issue, it's misalignment. Where you find transmission infrastructure growing rapidly in areas where we don't have effective demand, the distribution companies, because of the fact of inappropriate pricing that we're going through today, will prefer to supply power first to those who can pay. Now, if you put infrastructure around locations where they are not paying, and we record high technical and commercial losses, it's a problem for the distribution companies. Because it invariably means that the more energy I supply to those people, the less I collect. And the less I collect, the less I remit. So it's a system. So the systemic realization and realignment that is required now is that for a gas supplier to start anything whatsoever, it needs to have conversation with the generation company. The generation company must have seated at the table the transmission company. Then where is this power going to? The distribution company. There is a need for daily interaction in the value chain.
Okay, are you saying that does not exist at the moment?
It doesn't exist.
There's no conversation
Well,
among the major stakeholders?
Unfortunately, the conversation that we're holding today
is one of altercation.
More in the media than amongst ourselves. Because what should really happen in society where things work is that there's a daily interaction. My kidney, my liver, my heart, my brain, they are having regular conversation. It is when that conversation is not positive, I'm sick.
Well, let me ask you about the capacity of our GenCos, the generating power generation companies.
Yep.
Now, the minister was referring to the fact that in the last 10 days or thereabouts, that we lost over 16,000 megawatts.
Yep.
Now, is it really true that we have installed capacity of more than 16,000 megawatts, and yet, what is evacuated is so small?
Okay.
I ask you because I know you're also involved with Egbin power plant.
Yes, I'm going to answer you.
Sahara group.
I'm going to answer you directly. Egbin has today to give to the system 1,320 megawatts.
1,000.
The installed capacity of Egbin, we restored. At the point of privatization, and that's why when I hear comments that are suggestive of negativity and the rest of them around privatization, I wonder where it's coming from. At the point of acquisition, Egbin, we met doing 400 megawatts. Today, we've been able to ramp up to full capacity of 1,320 megawatts. Yesterday, the best we've done, really, up until yesterday, is 550, 600 megawatts. So you have stranded capacity of 700 megawatts doing nothing. And you know why? Misalignment. Misalignment, again, back to the initial point I raised. Until we address the fundamental reasons why we don't have electricity, all of us will just be sketching the issues and not address the issue. The issue is, look, there are enablers, key enablers required to make this sector work. This product is not a national product, it's a global product. It's a product that is everywhere. So if they are having electricity supply in Estonia and the rest of them, and places where we would ordinarily think they won't have electricity, why don't we have it here in Nigeria? But where you want to hide behind one finger and bury your head in the sand and behave that, look, no, it's somebody somewhere. It's always somebody somewhere. It's a blame game that we don't require. All of us need to sit down together to say, what are the issues here? And the issues for me are clear. There's no ambiguity regarding what are the issues here, nor do I have any disjointed view of what needs to be done.
Well,
what needs to be done is simple. Let's align the system. Let's put everybody together and say, okay, you coming into this sector, guaranteeing stable, regular, uninterrupted power, you gas supplier, what do you require? What is that cost to you? I, as a Genco, what do I need to put in? What is that cost? Transmission, for you to give power in an uninterrupted manner, what is the cost? And then distribution man. Now, we now see the cost. That is 70 naira per kilowatt hour. So there's no lie. And there's no beef or anywhere. Nobody has added anything that shouldn't be added. Well dimensioned. Okay, government now sits in and say, as a regulator and government, I can't allow my people to pay 70 naira per kilowatt hour, arising from their purchasing power and the capacity to pay and the rest of them. So what I'm going to say is, it's 60 naira per kilowatt hour. Now, as I say so, I'm backing it up with my 10 naira per kilowatt hour that I'll have to inject. Or, another model, I say, look, if you want power, pay for it. So, pay 70 naira. I want to free the resources for education, for roads, and some other social services. Or, I say, to those who have the capacity to pay, and that's a model that we should look at, to those who have the capacity to pay, make them pay on behalf of those who don't have the capacity to pay. Now, unfortunately, that has its own implication because it limits their capacity to create employment and improve the living standard of the people. So it's something that government needs to sit down to say, which one am I pursuing? Now, I haven't done the financial side of it, of the equation. You now come to the operational side of it. Okay, what do I require to make my machine continuously available? What do I require to generate 24/7? These are the things you require. Give it to me.
Well, I understand all these points, but you see, one of the things that government has done is to come up with what they call a power sector recovery program.
Yeah.
Part of the measures there is to encourage alternative access to power, particularly for big companies or anybody that may not be satisfied with the services being provided by the discos. What's your assessment of that power sector recovery program as defined?
Well, inherent in the policies of other nations of the world where we have regular and stable supply of electricity is you have energy mix. So it's not that you have a unipolar supply of, no, it's not just, you bring everything to the table. Now, but in bringing everything to the table, go to the countries where these things work.
Like Korea?
Exactly.
South Korea?
South Korea. No gas. They come to Nigeria, the likes of Nigeria to pick gas. But there's no restriction regarding don't charge this amount of money because all that they did, which is why we went to Korea to bring KEPCO to assist us, because we saw that our history was similar. So therefore, let's learn from them. So what they do in Korea is the true cost of electricity is reflected in the price. That's the first thing. Then the laws are harmonious. As we speak today, when you say, okay, eligible customer, let's try it, perfect, is in conformity with the law. However, as soon as any big customer, so-called eligible, exit a franchise area, it has its own ripple effect in terms of tariff for that particular location. Because remember, those are the customers I said cross-subsidizes those who can't pay, the residential customers. So the moment they leave that portfolio, the direct implication is that the tariff will go up. Now, is government ready for that from a system perspective? No. The load you use to build an economy anywhere in the world is system-based. You hardly will find an island mode, standalone electricity infrastructure where things work. You hardly will find it. Go and check. I've taken time out to check this fact. They're dependent on the grid, and the grid is cheaper. So what you need to do is to strengthen the grid to be able to do what it's meant to do. We don't have electricity, and it has its own implication. Population explosion is one of it. When you don't have light, people procreate. So for you to reduce procreation, and the population explosion.
Are you sure? You've tried that?
But
for you to be able to make that connection.
Because when there's no light,
There's unemployment.
You're less busy, you're not active. So invariably, you want to reduce high population explosion, provide electricity. You want to reduce crime, let there be light.
Well, in a bid to sanitize the discos and ensure that the consumers are treated fairly, the regulator, NEROC, is saying that under the MAP scheme, consumers should not pay for meter service charge or even electricity bill if there's power outage for more than 2 weeks. How does this sit with you?
Well, how it sits with me is simply put this. Policies and regulation must reflect the state of affairs in the environment. You cannot make policies outside the reality of the environment. The reality of our situation today is such that, like Ruben mentioned earlier, we've had system collapse how many times in the last 1 week? If you go around Nigeria now, there's more of darkness than electricity. Why? We first had issue with gas supply. Suddenly, the gas volume went down, and invariably, all the power generating firms went down with it. So if such a situation arises, who do you blame? Our situation is systemic. Let's address it systematically. Let's focus on it. I don't believe the regulator, with due respect to the regulator should not make pronouncements suggestive of the fact that the consumers, that we're finding it difficult, we're in pain serving, and they know the reality. In conversations we have, in the reality of the open book in terms of the costing of our business, they know the reality we face. Now, you cannot now alienate that consumer from us.
Well,
we don't want any form of alienation.
You've been saying repeatedly that government needs to do certain things.
Yeah.
That government needs to play its part.
Yes.
Now, only recently, the Minister of Power also said government is proposing to invest about 72 billion naira in the discos.
Yeah.
Government, of course, still has about 40% stake in the 11 discos. So do you think that's why government is doing this, and that you hope that government will do it, and will it make a difference if it does happen?
Naturally, it should make a difference, but like you said, the ownership structure of the distribution company is 60-40. Now, since we took over this asset, government has not put a dime into the business. So you have a 60% shareholder providing 100% of funding required in order to sustain the business. You and I know that that's not a model that works anywhere in the world. So it's a salutary thing. We are happy that government is waking up to the responsibility of putting their own resources into the game. Not a game, please, because I don't want to lose sight of this very important fact. We didn't have meters everywhere in Nigeria for 53 years. We've had the privilege of managing this asset barely for 5 years plus. So if government, with the huge resources available to it, could not meter all customers for 53 years, and in 6 years, government says, we perform the magic. Yes, we would like to perform magic. We would love it. It would delight us to make a positive difference. But it is not fair for our hands to be held behind us and we're expected to fight.
But this failure to have, a quality conversation, to have discussions on a daily basis, as you propose, do you get a sense that there is a political undercurrent to what is happening in the power sector? Because I've had government officials, for example, saying, look, the Jonathan administration just handed over the discourse to friends and cronies and companies and individuals who do not have the real capacity to deliver. And that's the source of this talk about the review of the privatization.
Okay, I just made an allusion to the fact that what we did in Egbin, it's not something that was done because we just spoke. We didn't speak. We said we were going to do it, we put our money behind it, and we made it happen. And I'm sure quite a number of other generation assets and distribution companies, they've been spending so much to ensure that not only they recover the investment, but they make impact. Because I will tell you straight away, in my company, our desire is no more to make money, in all sincerity, it's impact. But for us to make impact, we can't be losing money. When I hear of political consideration regarding the acquisition of the asset, KEPCO, like I mentioned earlier, is not a small player in this business. KEPCO is strong. KEPCO is global. So would somebody say KEPCO is not qualified to come and acquire assets in Nigeria? Now, one of the reasons why we found it difficult as a nation to attract additional investor and investment into the sector is simply because of policy somersaults. When policy prescriptions are not in consonance with global reality, you can't engender investment. It's absolutely impossible. Investors universally like clarity. They want a view that, look, this money I'm going to put in this economy, there won't be any policy changes that would affect this business. Now, for those of us who decided that we're going to put our money into our own country because we're patriotic and nationalistic, people shouldn't malign us or abuse us for doing what we did. We actually injected 3-point-something billion into this. We paid cash. It wasn't handed over to us as, take this asset, go away, enjoy yourself. No, we paid money, cash, for these assets. If we all have this money in our pockets today, we won't be exposed. We'll be okay. If we had fixed the money somewhere like most people did, we'll be fine. But we took a risk. But again, now we're being bashed for wanting to make Nigeria great again.
Well, there are talks that the Technical Advisory Committee on the minimum wage to advise the president on how to fund the new minimum wage, headed by economist Bismarck Rwani, suggested that the debts owed by the discos be converted to equities and tariffs be increased. What does this portend for the discos?
Or for the power sector?
Or for power in general, if implemented.
Okay. Let me be a bit simplistic. Reuben Abati had consumed electricity worth 500 naira.
Okay.
Reuben didn't pay. Now, for every amount that Reuben didn't pay, the entire value chain suffers. That's the implication. Anytime we find any customer who chooses not to pay, then the system suffers. Now, if there is no law that deals with that, as to how to recover that money from the Reuben Abatis of this world for money, for electricity consumed, not paid for, then there's a problem. Now, when you now say you should convert debt to equity, you are converting debts of the Reubens of this world to equity. That's what the system needs is cash flow. Positive cash flow is the requirement for success in this sector. Any re-engineering, financial reconstruction, or model being put together is not going to bring about the result we desire except there is cash injection. For cash to come into the economy, the price of the commodity must be right. I love what government is doing, quite frankly, and I think maybe I didn't fully address the question that Reuben raised earlier. When this government came on stream, part of what the government did, which we need to salute and salute well, and it resonated positively globally, is that there wasn't this emotional cancellation, let's go and cancel, let's destroy them. No, we didn't have that. Now, yes, we didn't have that, and we equally had the privilege of government injecting money, and big sums of money. 701 payment assurance scheme came from this government. So we salute the government for that. 701 has been exhausted. We need new investment made. Please, government, make that available. However, come into our world, come into our business, study what our realities are so that we can provide solutions in a united front towards making sure that there is light for all.
Well, thank you very much, Kola Adesina, Chairman Ikeja Electric. For this has been quite an interesting session with you. I hope when we invite you again, you will oblige us, because Nigerians, particularly in Lagos, are so concerned about, power supply.
They just want to switch and have lights
Yes,
come on.
yes, in any part of Lagos.
So that's when we're happy.
Yeah. And you say, you were quoted once as saying that if there is regular supply of electricity in Lagos, then of course the whole of Nigeria is well served, because this is the engine room of the Nigerian economy. Right. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
It's time now for a short break. When we come back, we'll be talking to Issa Gusso, Special Advisor to Borno State Governor Kashim Shettima on communications and strategy. Stay tuned.